Well, I hope that wasn't your experience as you came out here, and hopefully it won't be your experience going home as well. This will be a little bit different kind of speech. I want to open a dialogue, particularly with industry and academia today, and I want to start this dialogue with some facts. And the first fact I'll talk about is dependence on space is high, higher than it's ever been for sure within DoD. Navigation, timing, comm, weather, ISR, we'll talk about all those things in a minute. But our dependence has never been higher. In fact, it's integrated into how we fight wars today so deeply that it's hard to imagine taking space out of the equation. The second fact is that our vulnerability in space is increasing. If you look at debris, both natural and man-made debris, that's increasing. The traffic is increasing. We've now got over 50 nations that are participants in the space environment. And then the counter-space threats, both ground-based and space-based counter-space threats that we have to pay attention to. And then the third fact, our budget will at best, be flat. And there are some other draconian projections out there that would have our budget turning down very steeply. How much of that share will come to the space business? I don't think we know, but I think it's safe to assume that it's going to be a challenging time for us. So if you think about those three facts, the dependence being high, the vulnerability is increasing, and the costs, the budget rather, for space is likely to come down, the logic would say that we ought to get more money, but we're not going to get more money. So how do we think about this? And here's the question that I would like to pose to all of us. Are there architectural options that will provide a nexus of adequate capability, a passive resiliency, and costs that are within budget? So what do I mean by all that? So let's talk about adequate capability. We're not going to get any relief. I don't expect any relief. I'm not asking for any relief from the National Command Authority, from combatant commanders, other users of space systems. In terms of protected comms, national and nuclear command and control capability, when that message absolutely has to get there, nobody's going to relieve us of that requirement. Wideband communications, increasing use of airborne ISR traffic over wideband communications, intelligence traffic, routine command and control that travels over wideband comms. It's our lifeline, absolutely our lifeline to deployed forces around the world, as well as to our diplomatic corps around the world. And in this era of information-enabled warfare, there's no question that wideband satellite communications will continue to play a central role in all that we do. Missile warning. We've got to maintain vigilance on events around the planet. Missile defense, the contribution of missile warning to missile defense. Theater warning, telling our troops when to duck, where that missile may impact. And with increasing capabilities on the space-based infrared system, battle space awareness, technical intelligence, as we refine our IR sensors from space, there is no question that there will be more demand for this capability, not less. Let's talk about GPS for just a second. GPS is absolutely the gold standard for position, navigation, timing capability across the world. And oh, by the way, it's free. That's not a paid political announcement. It is free. There are civil, military, and commercial uses that abound. It's a $110 billion industry right now. 500 million cell phones are GPS enabled just to date. The military dependence on the timing signal from GPS, as well as the positioning and navigation capabilities from GPS, it just flat enables precision warfare. Everything we do employing weapons anymore seems to somehow involve GPS. So again, nobody's going to relieve us of that requirement. Weather satellites. Well, with the recent breakup of the INPOS program, the Defense Weather Satellite System is part of the national and international weather capabilities for our globe. We've got the morning orbit, and it's essential that we continue weather capabilities for our warfighters and for our civilian counterparts. So that just kind of scratches the surface about dependence, and I hope it makes the point that we're not going to be relieved of any requirements even as the budget comes down. And we're challenged with maintaining situational awareness in space. Our existing SSA capabilities, space situational awareness capabilities, currently track over 20,000 objects right now. We catalog those routinely and keep track of them. But that number is projected to triple by 2030. And much of that is improved sensors, but some of that is increased traffic. And then if you think about, there are probably 10 times more objects in space than we're able to track with our sensor capability today. Those objects that are untrackable, yet they are lethal to our space systems. To military space systems, civil space systems, commercial, no one's immune from the threats that are on orbit today just due to the traffic in space. Smaller satellites, more debris. More debris begets more debris, unfortunately, from a probability point of view. More debris is going to run into more debris, producing more debris. So you get the point. It may be a pretty tough neighborhood in LEO and GEO in the not too distant future here. So that speaks to our need to have better capabilities in the Joint Space Operations Center. And let me just talk for a minute. I know a lot of you are interested in whither goest the joint JSPOC Mission Systems program. We recently had an independent program assessment on that program, and we found some structural difficulties in the program. As a result, we're reviewing those IPA results. We've pulled back some RFPs, suspended response to those RFPs, but just hang with us for a little bit. We'll get a way forward developed here in the not too distant future and brief that through the department as well as to the Congress. So be patient with us for a little bit here. But we must continue to provide the required services, no question about it. But as Congressman just said, it will be with mature technologies, and it may be with just good enough capability rather than pushing the state of the art. I think it's clear that we've got to restore confidence in our ability to produce on schedule and on cost. And above all, we've got to bake in a mission assurance mindset in all that we do in this business. Mission assurance has to come first. So that's adequate capability. What about passive resilience? We can't tolerate the loss of mission-critical capability. We just can't tolerate it. Whether that be due to intentional things or things that just happen due to technical difficulties. We can't tolerate the losses. So if you think about from a technical point of view, a fault-tolerant design, I think that's where we need to be architecturally. We need to have a fault-tolerant architecture as we go forward. It's very difficult to defend in space. It's expensive. Physics gets in the way. The vast distances involved. I had them calculate the other day, okay, how big is our AOR in space? And from GEO down, just from GEO down, 73 trillion cubic miles. How do you defend 73 trillion cubic miles? So I think we've got to think about new ways that we're going to bring about our constellations in the future, and how can we produce higher resiliency with those new constellations? Do we need to think about different orbital regimes? I mean, inherently, it just seems like higher altitudes would be the right way to go, but is that the right way to go? Do we need to disaggregate our capabilities on satellites so that we aren't building such lucrative targets, so to speak, or even a technical difficulty takes out such a lot of capability? What about hosted payloads? What about commercial partnerships, commercial options? What about allied capabilities, international capabilities as well? Can we distribute sensors and network those together so we've got smaller satellites, smaller buses, but it gives you adequate capability when you network them together? Do we want to store and spare on orbit, or do we want to build ORS-like rapid reconstitution or augmentation capability? And as we think through that, is the next series of conflicts likely to be a come-as-you-are war so that it really doesn't matter how rapidly you can get there, it's come as you are? Do we need different strategies for different orbital regimes? Can we think about LEO different from HEO, different from GEO, different from MEO? Is that something we need to think our way through? And then how could all this contribute to launch costs? With smaller satellites, do we get more frequent launches but better production schedules, better economic order quantities, better industrial base effects, shared ride possibilities? There's a lot of questions, I think, around passive resilience, things that we need to think our way through. And the final area I want to talk about is cost and cost within the budget. Can we analyze all these trades that I've just talked about and let cost be the independent variable? I think we can. But do we need to also think about designing to budget and just letting budget be the driver? You know, we tried better, cheaper, faster, and we found that you could have 2 of the 3, but you couldn't have all 3. And it's tempting for industry to say to us, well, just get the government out of the way. Well, I think we've all seen that movie too. And that didn't work so well. We tried it in the 90s, and it didn't work.